Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to the party. We're delighted to have all of you with us today. Um, welcome to all of you. This is your Nature Journal Educators Forum, a weekly get-together of naturalists, educators, nature journalers who are interested in sharing nature journaling with other people. For some of us, that's just, I'm going to teach this to my family. For others, you're working perhaps with an institution and bringing it into your school. Today, we're going to be having a conversation about nature journaling and the holidays. So thinking of how do we incorporate the seasons into what we're doing in our journals. In addition to that, we're bringing ourselves in as part of the phenomenon that we're observing. So we all can pay a lot of attention to natural phenomena. What happens if we bring that same level of attention to ourselves and the traditions that we follow? Before we do, hey, welcome home from school. Um, Before we do, let's join Avea, the Mad Botanist Moore, who's going to walk us through some nature journaling opportunities near you, or perhaps just near a computer that's near you. And again, we're really trying to encourage people to connect with other people in your community and make nature journaling a team sport that you do there. But also we want to connect you with other people in the nature journaling community who are nature journal educators. So as educators, I want to encourage you to cross-train and learn from a bunch of different people. You're kind of like, I like that person's style. I like that. If you see anything that some other nature journal educator is doing and you like it, steal those ideas. Together, if we're all doing that, we're going to be pushing our envelope of kind of best practices, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Avea, delightful to be with you here on this sunny day here in California.
Indeed. Although we did have a rather nice deluge of rain a couple of weeks, right? I think it was actually only just last week. But we did have quite a bit of rain recently, so our plants are very happy about that. We hope that wherever you are in the world, that your weather is kind to you and to the nature around you. If there are changes in your weather, then we hope that you're looking at those. Even if we don't always write it down, although I hope we do because there's so many things to write down, I hope that we are aware and just observing. And if the changing of the weather causes distress, then let's just observe that and imagine that the weather will change again. And last but not least, a reminder to be gentle to ourselves during the holiday season. I say this as often as I can because I think that I can't say it enough. I think we could use the reminders that the holidays can be a time of great joy, but they can also be a time of great stress. And so I encourage folks as much as you can. I know that there's a lot of pressure on us, but let's find ways to observe the holidays on our terms, on your terms, in ways that are good for your health, that allow you to ask for support when you need, that also allow you to rest when you need. Today's conversation, as we said, is all about nature journaling during the holidays. And the idea with that is that whether you're alone or whether you're with family, we talk a lot about falling more deeply in love with nature through our compassionate, sustained attention. And this is a way of loving ourselves and our families more deeply too, with our compassionate, sustained attention with our nature journals. And I think you've heard enough from me. I will hand the floor to Jack and all of you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Avea. Again, we want to encourage people to cross-train and to meet each other. The more that we're sort of taking each other's classes, the more that we get to know each other, the more it makes our community strong. And I think this is a really good time for us to work at strengthening relationships and connections and community. The world the world gets better when we understand each other more and make deeper connections. And so one way we can do that is by sharing those space, sharing ideas, and looking for ways to help support each other. So let's talk about these holidays. There's a lot of different folks who there's a lot of different religious traditions that have timed um, major celebrations around seasonal events that are going on. When the solstice comes in, often around the solstices, there are different traditions that folks celebrate. Same with the equinoxes. Um, and the uh, so in one way, paying attention to the holidays in our life gives us an opportunity to also notice um, another way of noticing changes in seasons. And also, many people mark time by these big festivals and events. And it helps us sort of realize that the world keeps changing, and we are too. And um, but the idea here is that what happens if we start to pay attention to um, what is going on seasonally as and culturally around us as we go through these big turns in um, in another spin around the sun. Um, so what I would like to do is to first invite all of you to think for a moment about the traditions that you celebrate with your culture and what might be interesting to record in your journal. Um, Again, looking at when I think about nature, so like, but we're doing nature journaling and human beings. How can we pay attention to human beings? I include us in nature. I think of us as part of nature. And paying attention to the crazy things that we get up to on a seasonal basis is also really, really fascinating. Why don't we just grab a piece of paper, or let's try the um, let's try the chat dump. So if you haven't done this before with us, what we're going to do is come up with some ideas of different nature journaling possibilities that are seasonal, perhaps holiday related. And we're going to type those into the chat, but don't hit send yet. We'll all dump them in there at the same time. Because what happens if we start sending them in, boop, 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 then we start reading those instead of thinking about ourselves. So let's just give ourselves 1 minute. I wanted to encourage everybody in the chat to type in, without hitting send, some seasonal holiday related ideas. All right. So we're going to just do a big idea dump on 5, 4, 3, 2, go. All right. So part of what I like about this idea is that this is going to inspire us to um, use this holiday to get us to notice something that we normally don't notice or to think about something differently. I think anytime we can think about things in a new way, we're stretching our brains and giving ourselves opportunities for insight that we otherwise would not have. So, Avea, would you be willing to read some of these ideas?
Absolutely. So some of the
Can I
different,
bring you on the screen so we
oh,
can see?
sure.
Okay. So, whip.
Hello. So some of the ideas, and this is really lovely to see everybody's ideas because it's inspiring. Like it gives us inspiration for things we might not have thought of, different ways of celebrating. Some of the ideas are feeder watch info, winter or holiday favorite poems. Ooh, I really like that one. Idea of silence in winter, um, sanctuary, recording the winter skies, sorry, animal hibernation, and other winter wonders. More ideas are your favorite holiday treats like food, or traditions, putting up decorations, dancing, singing, gatherings with family and friends. Another one, some more ideas are Christmas lights, ornaments, Christmas tree, turkey dinner, family and friends, the new snow, and visitors to my theaters, family traditions. More ideas are lights on trees, houses, and other things, seasonal concerts, revels, New Year's, not New York, New Year's Eve Beethoven countdown.
New Year's Eve Beethoven countdown. Tell me, I have no idea what that is, so we have to find out about the Beethoven countdown.
The local Boulder, Colorado classical music station, which is probably streamable, does a New Year's Eve Beethoven countdown, so you get Ode to Joy at midnight.
Oh, that's nice. That's one of my favorites.
That
Yeah,
is
yeah. I was driving through the Eastern Sierra with my family, and uh, we we did we played Ode to Joy in that environment because my dad did that with me once when I was coming over Monitor Pass with him on a road trip. He said, "All right, this is where we need to play the Ode to Joy," and then just sort of used it as like this time of just deliberate attention to that piece of music. So I like that they have a countdown to that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no worries. That was really cool, and I was curious too. Thank you, Leslie. Um, and that idea right there just gave me another idea too. I'll just say that really fast. Um, Holiday soundscape
Hmm.
and also holiday smellscape, where you, because the experiences that are so rich around the holidays that it'd be interesting to be able to put like a sound map on your page of the different things that you can hear or the smells and try to come up with the good describing words for all of the different smells. Um, so continuing with the ideas here, um, New Year's Day potluck and whack last year pinata. I love that. I didn't know about that one. Snowy full moon hikes, especially in snow. Oh, God, it must be gorgeous. First ski, too many cookies, stews, maybe starting stone soup as a regular thing. Ooh, in fact, speaking of snowy full moon hikes, that makes me think of one of my favorite poems by Robert Frost, Stopping by Woods in a Snowy Evening. It's almost the solstice. Um,
Mm.
really good solstice poem. More ideas are taking a 12 days of Christmas approach to observe 12 things about the season, one each day, or alternatively, an Advent calendar style approach, or an 8 nights of Hanukkah approach, one wonder per day, or nature journaling your family or friends' favorite moments of the holidays. Um, where it's almost like a study of your family member and the things that bring them joy. You could create that to joy maps. Um, more ideas are considering the foodstuffs for the holidays, the plants and maybe animals involved in our special meals. And also digging into that a bit more, looking at the things that make up our gifts and sort of tracing it back to nature. That could be like a fun way of, but also a really, really important way of just kind of appreciating the natural world for the gifts. More ideas are what kind of tree is this? What is its range? What features can I use to identify it? Why no cones? Mistletoe. So cool. Structure and function. Why do we use oak mistletoe in the USA? Ooh, there's more than one kind of mistletoe. Now I've got questions. Where does cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove come from? And adding on to that, what plant families are they from? Who grows with them naturally? Like who are their companions in the wild? What other life depends on those aside from us? More ideas are we have a Christmas tree. Many years I do a drawing in my all around journal. Ooh, I love that idea. It's sort of like a, oh, I could almost imagine that as being like a Christmas tree view of the world, just looking out from the tree and seeing what the tree sees around. More ideas. Hi, this year I will spend winter holidays, Christmas time with my family in Catalonia. There they are gathering to collect presents from Kagatio, no Santa there. Sketching food and winter nature, exotic for me compared to Slovakia. And I'm realizing there was an earlier idea that I missed, and I apologize. Another idea is snowy forest. Um, to really appreciate the snowy forest and your surroundings and be able to be out in those places. More ideas are what a lovely way to connect particular music with an experience, and also snail's dish that my family will eat. I love that. Like another thing about this is that not only are we sharing ideas in the chat, but also sharing the ideas with each other. And maybe it'd be fun to nature journal what other people's celebrations are, not just within our family, but maybe find somebody who celebrates in a different way than you do on a different part of the world, or even near your part of the world, and nature journal and really pay that sustained compassionate attention to how somebody else might experience the holidays. So those are the ideas in the chat so far, and thank you.
And I like that if you visit a friend who has traditions that are different than yours, is use your journaling as an excuse to be really inquisitive, um, and try to understand aspects of these traditions that are different than yours. The approach of sketchnoting, um, those might be really, really fun. So when you're mentioning the rest sort of cooking and things, it made me also think of doing a infographic of the process of baking your favorite kind of holiday cookies, um, or um, or some other aspect of some food. Can you turn that process into a graphic to to share um, with other people's? Yeah, infographics are really fun projects to kind of create for yourself. The general idea is you sort of start off by sketching something or showing a process, and then you also do some research on the sides of it and add those into your page. So it's intentionally, let's say I'm looking at I'm looking at holly, and documenting some stuff about it. Then I might go online and figure out, like, why is this used in old sorts of symbology, in Christmas-ish traditions? Why does this plant show up so much? Or is there something else I can learn about it? Are the berries edible? Are Why? Why not? Those sort of things. So you're creating an infographic around that. Looking at this list, does anybody see one that kind of sparks your creativity and makes you think, this would be fun for me to do, or this would be fun for me to do as a kind of present as an assignment for students that I'm working with? So also remember, we're educators here. We're looking at not just for ourselves, but what are some ideas that we can use to inspire observation and curiosity and connection in our students. If anybody's got some thoughts, just please raise a hand. I'm going to bring on the Mad Botanist. The floor is open also to anybody else who wants to share. All you have to do is use that raise hand button, or turn on your video and do a little dance. And we'll notice that. Or you can just raise your hand. If you don't feel like dancing, you can go. So, but hey, if you're doing a dance, we'll like that even more. Um, and so Avea, what you thinking?
So when you mentioned about infographics, about how you make certain dishes and stuff like that, it makes me think of like when we create the how-to guides, the way that Ray Bonto did a while ago about how to draw certain things, or then the way that we were creating the zines. Zines could be a really fun thing to do during holidays. But and then any sort of how-to guides, it made me think of when people like to create the paper cutout snowflakes. But I'd seen an idea recently that I really wish I knew how to do about bug snowflakes. I'd love to know how to make bug snowflakes where instead of creating like the thing where then it's crystalline structure, instead it's the silhouette of a bug that repeats over and over again as a snowflake. And I'd love to learn how to do that. I personally want to learn how to make mantis snowflakes. So if anybody knows how to do that, teach me.
Escalating mantis, I love it.
I want to know how to do that. So yeah,
That's fun. Also, just as we think about, like, just making those snowflake sculptures. Um, how would journaling that get us to think differently about the geometry of how many folds, how many cuts makes how many shapes, and what shapes are they going to be? Can you predict that before you open up the paper? Um, can you sort of figure out how this would look? Like, what could you use to make just the process of folding and cutting paper a little bit more interesting? Um, other thoughts and ideas? So while we're waiting for that, I'm gonna just sort of a little note about the mistletoe. Yeah, here in the United States, or at least when I go to Safeway in my area, and people are selling, or the Girl Scouts are out on the curb selling mistletoe, it's always oak mistletoe, which has these broader leaves, and but I would it makes me kind of wonder about um, how did this species kind of get into our traditions? If you look at something like why are there eggs and bunnies around at Easter, right? Like what's up with the eggs and bunnies? And they're like, oh, it's this fertility celebration in other traditions, and that iconography has now just sort of come into it. Sort of this time when spring and renewal and all these sorts of things, the egg and the bunny represented rebirth. And so that's pretty cool. Um, the like where does what's the origin of the mistletoe, or even of bringing a tree into your house? Um, what's up with that? We don't do that in July. Right? Why not? What's going on here? Um, so what does this get you thinking about? What are some other ideas, or what would be kind of a fun class project if you have students who celebrate different traditions? What would be a really good project to have people do to then come back and share with each other? How might you organize that as an educator?
I was just thinking that oh, I probably should spotlight myself because I can do that. I was just thinking like the person who came up with the idea of looking into other people's holidays and traditions could be really cool. Now you'd have to have a fairly diverse school to have like lots of different celebrations happening. Would it work if you only had one kid who celebrated Hanukkah and everybody else who celebrated Christmas? That would be really bombarding that one kid with all those questions. But I was thinking that if you had a really diverse class, you could obviously split them into groups and then have sort of one representing they kind of are able to interview each other. But it just sort of came to me too is that what happens if you connected your class with like a retirement home or a retirement community, and then had them sort of interview those folks sort of on some of their traditions and maybe even how those holiday traditions have changed over time. Um, we've gone very, for most people have gone to a very materialistic holidays in terms of Christmas, and we purchase, and um even for my family this year, we've decided to cut back, and we've decided that instead of purchasing a whole bunch of stuff, that we would do an experience instead. And so my husband and I have figured out what we're going to do, and the girls don't know, but I just think like you only have so much space for so much stuff, right? And so what's really important, the stuff or the spending the time with your loved ones and the people around you? And so it would be really interesting to see and talk with people who have lived a lot longer and be able to say like, what was it like when you were young? Even if it was, Christmas and you celebrated Christmas, the way that it would have been celebrated, 50 years ago is probably very different than how it's celebrated now. And what are some of those traditions that we've kept, and what are some of those traditions that are different and how it's sort of evolved over time. And then hopefully within that community as well, you'd find some folks who are also celebrating other holidays. And so, but now you're reaching out and it's a community thing as well. So I know my kids' school, I've kind of stole the idea a little bit. They used to do it around, wasn't for Christmas. I think they were just doing like they would interview the folks at the retirement home. But as we were sort of talking about it, I thought it's really interesting to be able to connect it through the holidays, and some of those folks maybe aren't getting visitors at the holidays either. And so that would be something that would be really interesting. And maybe it could, I don't know, I'm just spitballing ideas here, but maybe at the end of it, there's some kind of sharing, and then there's maybe a luncheon, like a potluck or something like that you could do that would really sort of bring them together. So just thinking from a classroom perspective, how we could sort of bring that in, I think that'd be kind of cool. So anyways, just a thought.
Oh, I love that idea. Especially because, yeah, for many, as Avea mentioned earlier, very often holidays, the kind of thing that everybody says, oh, it's time for family getting together, all these sorts of things. If you don't have that going on, it's
Yeah.
also a time of real loneliness,
Yeah.
because that whole kind of societal pressure to be like, celebrate this with family. And if that doesn't happen for you, then there's
Mhm.
even kind of societal shame about that. Like, what's wrong with you that you're not celebrating this with your family? So giving an opportunity for human connection
Mhm.
in this, I think is beautiful. And the other thing that I like that you're doing in that idea is by kind of tying this into kind of getting history. Here,
Mhm.
we're using these, sometimes these holidays can be anchor points, sort of that you can remember that event. Like if I asked you to remember um, uh, July 2nd's in the past. Like I've got no reference point. But this
Mhm.
does give you a place to kind of go
Mhm.
back. Um, go
And
go.
sometimes, and I think it's interesting too that sometimes those would be like there would be happy memories, and sometimes there wouldn't be happy memories. But I think also being able to talk about it and to express that, not every holiday is always a great holiday, and sometimes things have happened or whatever. But I just think that connection and that sharing could be really impactful. And then I think the change over time, right? And it sort of makes people think. I even saw somebody, said I had a meme the other day, and it was kind of aligning with Dave and I's kind of thoughts about Christmas and stuff. And it was like, the older you get, the less that you need, because you start to realize that what you need for Christmas is the things that you already have wrapped around you, right? Which is,
Uh,
your space in your home, that you don't necessarily need all of these other things, right? So for me, I look at it and I go, do you need it or do you want it? And what's the life expectancy of that in my house before it's either A, being given away, or B, thrown in the garbage? And so what's my impact on that as well, right? So these are some of the things that we're, sort of talking about and thinking about this year around our house. So I thought, well, maybe it'd be interesting to do it in a different way.
well,
Mhm.
and that whole conversation around consumption.
I watched a really great documentary on Netflix, by the way, about consumption. So if you're looking for a really great documentary, sort of on the world and marketing and how
Oh,
these multi-million dollar businesses are really make you think that it's what you need, it's a fantastic documentary. So
what's
I
it
can't,
called?
I'll look it up and I'll put it in the chat because I can't
Okay.
exactly remember, but it's on Netflix and I was blown away by it. And I was like,
Oh,
wow. Okay.
that sounds fun, because that is what here's this sort of this time of kind of family connection, and it's been absolutely hijacked as this reason to buy stuff.
And I will tell you, like, as a parent, like, it's expensive, right? And so you obviously want to be able to provide that experience for your children and things like that as well. But it's amazing to me, like, just like how prices have changed for things, and there is a guilt, right? That you
Right.
feel when you're out shopping and you're like, this is my budget, and then you look at what you've purchased for that budget, and you're like, oh my God, it's like three things, right? And then you think, is there a stigma around how much was given compared to other houses, right? And so there's this whole wrapped up thing that's happening where you're like, you just want to focus on it, but then there's this guilt where society is making you think that you do need to buy more and that'll make your child happier. And you're like, I know that it won't, but it's there, right? And it's sort of
Right.
like in your face. And so yeah, it's kind of interesting, that whole thing. So yeah.
And um the island of neglected toys. This we kind of load ourselves, load up with stuff in places or families that have the means to do that. And then in families that don't, then there's this guilt about not doing it. Yeah, what would it be like? What if everybody has some thoughts or ideas to kind of be more intentional about that consumerism? Avea, I'd love to bring you back into the conversation. And also, I want to invite everybody else on the talk here. If anything we're saying touches a chord, please, we want to encourage you to raise your paw, share your thoughts and ideas. Avea.
I've got ideas about the consumerism, but first I'd like to go back a little bit to something that Billy Joe was saying earlier. What you were saying about like going and talking with our elders and hearing their stories about what the holidays were like. It reminds me of something that we used to do at my school, except that I like your idea even more. So when I was a kid, I don't know if maybe other people had this experience either as kids yourselves or at your kids' schools or when you're teaching. Um, do they ever do the thing where you have your group of kids and you make them all learn various holiday songs and then you go and you sing at an elderly home? They had us do that. We would go sing at a place called Mercy Terrace. We would practice for a few weeks and we'd practice the holiday songs and, be told to not, make our voices do the weird things that kids' voices do. And then we'd go and we'd sing to the elders. And a lot of them, some of them would have visitors, but like Billy Joe was saying, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily. And, being neglected over the holidays, which is really painful for a lot of people. And so they always seemed very delighted just to have like us young people around. But what I really like about your idea about asking them questions about what they remember is that then instead of just, singing at them, it invites them to talk. It invites them to talk and to share. If we're looking for connections with our kiddos, then that can be like practicing listening skills, improving listening skills with our kiddos while we listen to what people have to share. Another thing could be that we almost could, like, without too much officialness, we can almost think of it like as an interview, like interview somebody who has had all of this history, and then also it reminds me of something that Rebecca had us doing for her restoration class. Highly recommend the next time she teaches it, by the way. And without telling too much about the activity, it was that she would have us go to our family members and ask about certain plants or animals or different nature nature beings that were important from a cultural perspective or from like a traditional perspective or maybe from a coming down through your family perspective, whether that's that, oh, my family member comes from Hawaii, and so they value the orchids that were used to make the leis, or that uh, my family moved to New Mexico, and so now they value, I don't remember which cactus it was that now they value, but there's a particular cactus that they now find special. And it can be a similar thing with your family members or with people who are in more neglected communities. It could also be interviewing of a Christmas tree. It could be interviewing of your gifts and figure out where they come from. Another thing about consumerism that could help is a lot of us might choose the holiday time to also look at things that we realize we don't really need, but that might still be in good condition for other people to have. And I don't know if it's because information has changed or maybe workplace select have changed, but I bet a lot of us, myself included, would really love to know where we could bring things that are still good to be given as gifts, but like where to give them, because there are some places that will only accept things that are brand new, never opened. Sometimes we might think, oh, we're going to give this used thing to somebody else, but then like it might not be appreciated or it might feel like, looking down on, and we don't want that. So it might be good if anybody has that information to share with each other so that we know where to pass on those kinds of gifts. Another idea about consumerism that I have is that when I'm trying to get gifts for people, and I struggle with this too because of the whole consumerism and money and that kind of thing, or when I'm trying to make gifts, I try to look for something that really represents the person I'm I'm getting it for. And so here's a thing I like to do sometimes that I invite folks to try as well. Sometimes I'll draw a little picture of the person and then I'll draw all of the things that I associate with them. So, like, I might have somebody who I care about deeply who loves things like involving mantids, or who loves trains, or who loves all things randomly Star Wars, or who happens to find this one particular plant really hilarious. But like just drawing all of those things. And that way it's less about the consumerism bit, but it's more just about knowing the person. And then from there, that can either.
And paying attention to that.
Exactly. And it can either be one of those things where you wind up choosing a gift maybe that's based off of those, or if not, it might just be the thing where that itself becomes the card that you give to them to show that you've been paying attention to them. Even if you can't actually get something for them, then you're just showing that I know all of these things that you love that make you the person who you are. Here you go. I want you to know that I see you. So maybe that could help. Um, more thoughts I'm sure I have, but I wanted to pass along to Leslie and to Star. Also wanted to add the one more thing, that thing about like making sure that we know we see each other, I think is hugely important for the holidays. I know that it's not always like there's other seasons too where people can get really depressed. Like if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, I know that the summer is a particularly rough season for a lot of people. But I think that the biggest thing we can do in their holidays is to show people that we see them. So I wanted to add that just in case. I'm going to pass to Leslie and then Star and Billy Joe and John.
And I also love it that you know things about your friends, because this one really likes mantids, and you've got friends who are like, I'm really passionate about mantids. The something that that I notice about you is that you're constantly paying attention to people. If anybody kind of knows the backstory on anyone in our community, it's you, because you stop, you ask, you pay attention, you listen, and you remember. So respect for that. Hey,
I'm gonna pop off and I'm gonna put Star on, but I just popped it into the chat really quickly. It's Buy Now, the Shopping Conspiracy, which is on Netflix. So I'm gonna unspot like myself and I'm gonna add Star in.
So Leslie.
So I'll defer to Star if it's still on the topic of consumerism, because I was going to go back to calendars.
Let's jump back there and then we'll.
Sure. So
it's okay to bounce around.
Right. So not all calendars are solar calendars. The Jewish calendar is a modified lunar calendar where when it gets too out of whack, you stick in the 13th month, you get big shift. But of course, a major exception is the Islamic calendar. So this business about holidays being associated with a particular season, completely throw that out the window. What I don't know is, are there any other lunar calendars that anybody knows of that are free flying, that don't do adjustments so that holidays could happen any time of the year?
Don't know. Not that I know
of. Or for that matter, other people might know other significant calendars out there. Are any of the First Nations, Polynesian, I don't know if those are solar or lunar. I'm just curious if anybody knows.
Yeah. And the yeah, it'd be interesting if there are traditions that have, like, you've got to keep track of this is the rainy season and this isn't the rainy season. You've got to keep track of this is when it's really cold, or this is when it's time to plant wheat. It'd be also interesting to see if there are other sort of calendar systems that are, as you said, say tracking the moon. But then I'll be also curious to learn like what you also do to sort of keep where you are in the trip around the sun. Oh, here's another thing to speak of this trip around the sun. That is a great thing to sketch note. The why is it that in the Northern Hemisphere it's cold right now? And why is it that in the Southern Hemisphere this is beach weather? So those are all things that are sketch notable. Thanks for those ideas, Leslie. Star, what does this get you thinking about?
Well, I have a retreat coming up next week on gratitude, and it's got me thinking about how when we are really grateful, we have this feeling of sufficiency, because we realize how rich our lives are. Really, and got some strange lights going on. But anyway, we have this sense of fullness. And I think that kind of shoots consumerism in the back, because if you don't really have that push to buy, you're not going to. There's this interesting movement, and I don't have a source for it, but probably somebody else here does, of not purchasing anything but essentials. And I did that. I tried that a couple of years ago. but I had to make some caveats for myself. So I decided I wouldn't buy anything except art supplies, books, and gifts. I had three categories I would allow myself. And actually, I got through the year pretty well. It was really an interesting experiment just to watch my own patterns and how often I would kind of fall for the idea that I needed to buy something that I didn't need to buy. And it's just interesting to observe your behaviors around that. And I think honestly that that could be very interesting to journal about. And if we don't get a hold of consumerism, our poor planet is doomed. So it's really a powerful thing for us, and I think worthy of our time and thoughtfulness. And yeah, I'll be talking about it next week. So the other thing that comes to my mind, because I really enjoy thinking about and practicing with this myself, is the idea of light and dark. And the light that, well, right now it's pretty dark where I am, and the snow's covering everything. And there's this time of darkness that sometimes people think pretty negatively about. But I think it's really a beautiful invitation to quiet and rest, if we're willing, if we're willing to do it. But that again, that's very counter holiday festivity, madness. So, but I think a lot of people have a negative idea about darkness. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing with my nature journaling group is inviting them to reflect on their own experiences of light and of darkness and their feelings about that, and how we really don't have one if we don't have the other. They really interact. You know, you can't experience the light if you don't have some darkness. And is that a bad thing? And a lot of, I mean, I deal with mostly seniors, not all, but a lot of seniors. And there is a lot of loneliness at this time of year, even within families. Like you might think, well, you know, she's going to her grandkids or whatever. But, you know, if you lost your beloved spouse or your best friend, you know, it doesn't necessarily make it okay just to put you someplace else. So just to have a lot of awareness around that. And I was thinking when Billy Joe was talking about that wonderful idea, you know, if in dealing with older folks, one of the nicest things you can do is invite them to be of service in some way. So, you know, to have them participate in offering a program, to have them you know, not just to have them passively receive, but to really get them into having an opportunity to be needed, to have something to give back. You know, it's so important for people. Until they can't, it's important.
That is really, really wise to give people the opportunity to kind of reinvest in being of service. Rob Wade made an interesting distinction between olders and elders. And some people, as time goes on, we all get older, but we don't necessarily turn into an elder. What is it that sort of makes an elder? It's somebody who chooses a path of kind of continued connection and service and engagement. But our MO in our culture is to take anyone who's getting older and to isolate them.
Right. Put them aside.
We have special buildings for people like you. And
absolutely,
we will go and make a celebratory visit and feel really good about ourselves by visiting you on a holiday.
But it's pretty sad.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I think is to just, as much as possible, create opportunity, you know, and welcome older people into roles that have some significance. Not to assume because somebody has gotten older that they don't have something to offer, which I think happens a lot.
Yeah.
So those are the my meandering thoughts.
No, I think this is absolutely on point. And I think that you're bringing up sort of the metaphor of the darkness,
Hmm.
both the reality of the darkness and the metaphor of the darkness
Hmm.
is also really relevant and useful. So that just sort of is, we see like the dark is the bad time, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
is it that we all need sort of a rest in this, and sort of, you know, um to be like that deciduous tree that's dropping its leaves right now. It just turned into a blaze of glorious yellow. It's a mulberry. And now it's they're all dropping to the ground. And it's going to go through a stage of not death, but it's of waiting for
Yeah,
the right time for the next thing.
yeah.
Next thing. I love your it um makes me want to write a poem, what you said.
Yes, yes. Well, that's our inner landscape. You know, we want to explore that too. And you can connect that outer landscape and that inner landscape, and you can connect the light and the dark. And with my own nature journaling group, I'll be introducing lightness and darkness, and then just giving them some of these, like some questions, you know, is it, how do you perceive it? Is it negative? Is it positive? When is it? Each of those things, and just try to get them going, because they'll just run with it, you know. And yeah, you know, in my own nature journaling, I'm as concerned about the inner landscape as the outer landscape, and I see them as just completely interconnected. So yeah,
Um,
so I think Jim has something
well,
he wants
I
to.
think first Avea had a thought and some ideas. And so we're first going to bounce over to Avea, and then we're going to be joining Jim. Star, thank you so much for those insights. That's really, really powerful.
Pleasure.
Ordinarily, I'd have Jim go first, but he already pointed to me to go first. Thank you for that. Some things that connect to what Star and Jack, you two were just talking about. Um, oh yeah, I should lower my hand. Yes, sorry. But a thing about darkness. Because that made me think that I think that there are like a lot of times where we can change our relationship to darkness, and to see that as that period of rest, like Star is saying. Also, though, to be aware, and this doesn't have to be in contradiction to each other. It's just more like this and this. To be aware that also there might be folks very close to us who we know who might suffer seasonal affective disorder, and that doesn't always mean it's a wintertime one, but it tends to be more common that it's winter. And it could be that like this, that there could be invitations to help change somebody's relationship with darkness. It also could be a really good opportunity to offer kindness to somebody who might be struggling a little bit, and to help maybe turn a period that's normally quite scary maybe into maybe something that's filled with good memories, and have that opportunity. And then also to be gentle to folks who maybe are struggling. I just wanted to raise awareness about that, because we don't always talk about seasonal affective disorder very much, but it affects, I think, a lot more people than we're aware of. Just ignoring that. And so I wanted to make sure I brought that up. And also, I really love the idea that Star and Jack had about acts of service. It could be fun as well. Like I think that there might be different organizations that do acts of service specifically around the holidays. So it could be really fun to share those as we find them, with each other. In fact, when I put this recording up later on, if folks have acts of service opportunities, it'd be great if people would put it into the chat on Jack's YouTube, so that way people from all over the world could see them and have ideas. Because sometimes acts of service make people's holidays feel better, because it offers a way of community, a way to see each other, a way to feel part of the world. Um, and and then also that reminded me, I actually have a request, and this is not to pressure anybody, but it's a request for help, if folks would be willing. Um, for Last year I was a little bit late to this, but before that, for about 3 or 4 years, I was doing this thing on Christmas. I was doing Pencil Miles and Chill Christmas, where I would invite people to come online with me for a special session, so that way people wouldn't be alone. as an opportunity. And last year I overslept and completely missed my cue, and it was very embarrassing, etc. And I figure that this year I will just go out and outright ask for help. That if anybody would like to lead that, I would really appreciate it. I'd like to say that I'll be able to do that. As folks know about me, um, the day after Christmas is a death anniversary. It's the day that my husband died 2 years ago. And while I've done a lot of healing since then, I know that it will probably be a difficult time, and I could use help. So if anybody would be willing to lead Pencil Miles and Chill um, during Christmas, I could help you set that up. If anybody would like to do that, there's no pressure, but that way it might offer an opportunity for folks to not be alone. So I wanted to ask for help. Another thing I wanted to say before I pass the floor to Jim, aside from how much I love the term inner landscape, is, you know what, I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, but just that I'm loving this conversation, and I'm sure I'll remember it later, but I'm going to pass the floor to my good friend, Jim. Thank you.
And Avea, thank you for creating that space for people. And I want to encourage anybody who has the bandwidth to step up and kind of help with that. That could be a real service for somebody. I remember years ago, Avea, when we had just started our online things, and it was the first sort of Christmas, New Year's block in during the pandemic. And I remember saying, like, I think I'm going to close all my classes down because we're going to be doing all these other sort of things. And it was you had the insight of sort of seeing that a different way and realize that that's when it's going to be particularly important to sort of stand up there, to sort of be available for some people, and chose to keep Pencil Miles and Chill and other things going throughout that time, specifically for that. I remember just thinking to myself, like, that insight required a mental reframing that was really profound. So I've always respected that.
Thank you very much for that. Also, to let people know that we had a Pencil Miles and Chill on Thanksgiving. We plan to do that every year too. And part of that was because people showed up to Pencil Miles. Like, more people came to that session of Pencil Miles on Christmas than they have at any of my other sessions ever, with the exception of Wild Wonder, of course. And it was beautiful. Jack was there. Beth and Fiona came on and they sang. And so thank all of you for thank all of you for coming together and creating that community together, because that wasn't just me, that was all of us. So yeah, thank you for that. And I'm going to pass the floor now to Jim.
Hi. Yeah, this is just something not necessarily this season related, but someone was talking about, but it is a good time of year to do it because the sun is lower in the sky. Talking about the Earth going around the sun and the moon and all that. And it reminded me, sometime earlier this year, I was looking out of one of our downstairs windows that faces westerly, and looking at the sun, and I just started kind of sketching the window and making notes about where the sun was. And I don't think I really was finicky about how much time it was taking, but that would be something. But as I was doing it, I started kind of able to get the thought of, it wasn't the sun was going down, it was like I was going this way, and the sun was going down because I was going. And the idea that, yes, it's not, the sun's not going around the Earth. We are turning. And that's what's
you're
making
spinning
this happen.
backwards away from that sun that you're watching go down.
Right. So, well, and yes, you're going backwards. Yeah. But just the idea that you're moving and not the sun. So I was able to kind of at least start thinking about that. So that might be something you could really, in a different circumstance, be able to really put in a journal page. And there was another thing that just occurred to me while we were talking, but now, yeah, like Avea, it's sort of fleeing my mind. Maybe I'll put it in the chat. Oh, I know it would, because this is Educators Forum. Another possible topic, when Rose is done, or that people might think about, how do you deal with crazy students at this time of the year? Because what's making me think of that is I had really wanted to do VTS in the classroom setting, and the place where I teach, very small, and I haven't been working there that long. I'm not that experienced, but I was like, okay, it was a couple days before Halloween, and okay, this is a good day to do that. And it didn't go over very well. The kids were wild. And I said something to the administrator after that, and she's like, oh, they're always like this before Halloween. It's just, it's like a full moon with werewolves. So that's just the thought.
Yeah, just sort of to kind of ping off of that for a moment. The same thing, like the end of school, the start of school.
Mhm.
Are you teaching before the big holiday? Are you teaching after the big holiday? Are you teaching after a traumatic event that has happened in your community? All these things affect our kids, and sometimes we've got our lesson plan, and it rains, so we switch it up. We've got our lesson plans, and the kids are emotionally, intellectually in a different space, so we have to check it up. And if we stick to those lesson plans and try to make it happen, we're not paying attention to the ingredient that is the kid. And so it's not you. And sometimes, the I've been outdoors with groups of kids, and I've had this ecology lesson that I really wanted to teach. And I thought to myself, you know what we're going to do? We're going to see how quickly we can get to the top of that hill together. How quickly can we get there together? And my lesson plan goes from, maybe all these sort of science things that I had planned to do at outdoor school, to we're going to really kind of work on social emotional stuff and see if we can get some of these kids by the end of the time really sort of having a deeper appreciation or respect for each other. I know that Billy Joe's had lots of experience in this. I mean, bring you in if you want to add something to that. But the part of that, there's the lesson, there's the plan, the place that you are, there's the kids, that how those things interact and come together. Part of it we have control over, and most of it we don't. Billy
Yeah,
Joe.
I was just gonna say, I put in the chat, like, really have to be flexible. And I know it sounds sort of silly, but you just have to remember it's not about you and it's not about your plan, it's about the students. For many years I worked with students who were in a separate class because they were diagnosed with like ADHD and ASD and all sorts of different things. And the idea was they were in these smaller classrooms where they were able to sort of be a little bit more themselves, and there was a little bit more opportunity, and there was more access for them. But I would come with a plan, and then I would have a B plan, a C plan, a D plan, an E plan. And then sometimes I was like, well, none of those plans work today, but this is what they were into. And so my job when I went in with them was to always do something outdoors with them. And so sometimes that was just a walk. That's what we did today, and that was our success. Other days we got to some kind of programming, but that was a big wake up call for me in those moments, is that my plan was my plan, but it didn't necessarily align with what the students needed in that moment in time. And so I really think that we have to remember as educators that we're there for the students, we're there for them, we're there to help them, and that whatever our plan is, it has to make sure that it aligns with them. And so that's where I kind of just go, like, being flexible, and I still keep it in my mind nowadays, like, remember, Billy Joe, it's not about you. It's not about you, right? So I can do my plan later with something else or on my own, but in this moment, this is what these kiddos are requesting and they need. And I will tell you that I think it's all across the world. I was just in the school doing emergency supply the other day on Monday, and the kids are bonkers right now, right? So they're getting excited. They're gonna, be off for 2 weeks of school, and the teachers are saying the same thing. And so I think, whatever it is you're doing, try to think like what's gonna be super fun and what can be super engaging, but super flexible at the same time. So those are some of the things that I might add into that.
Yeah, and Jim, you had a follow-up on that.
I would just a quick comment on what Billy Joe that was saying, that a couple of years back, there was a period where they would be having their health ed at the school where I'm, and so I would prepare these lessons and and put a fair amount of effort into it. Well, this is what we're going to watercolor or whatever, and the administrator would come to me and be very apologetic. Jim, sorry, we're having well bodies today. All your students are gone. These are all these other students that you've never taught before. They're coming in.
Yes.
And I would be like, great. All I need is paper and pencils, and I'll think of something. And the great thing was, it wasn't from me. It was just something that happened. Now, if I forgot my lesson plan or couldn't do something that I had planned on doing, it was my fault, I'd be devastated. But, I was just, my motto was, I love chaos, chaos is your friend.
I think I always had like a thought, like an idea of like, this is where it could go. And then just kind of went with it in wherever it did. And as long as I had, those supplies or whatever it is. And I would say for me in general, I prefer to be a minimalist in my education style. I don't like to have a lot of things, because when you have a lot of things, it means that I have to remember how to use those things. And so that doesn't always work well for me, but it also means that there's more complexity to it. So if you are a minimalist, it's very easy to be able to adjust and move and use the space within nature to be able to do that. And I think that that's worked really well. So I think you're right. And then you sort of have to just be flexible.
Yeah. Just a few weeks ago, I had this lesson plan set up where the students were going to be sketchnoting information about Mesoamerican cultures. And just the energy was just wrong in the room. And I started to kind of push it. What did we end up doing? We ended up doing the Heimlich maneuver with pillows. And we had these pillows and a stuffed animal, and we were doing the Heimlich maneuver, and we're learning how to kind of go through that process. Ended up having such a great lesson that one of the teachers down the hall came down to complain, and which I thought was like, this is a sign that okay, something's going right in here. But yeah, sometimes we just got to flex with it. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Billy Joe. Rosa, we'd love to hear your thoughts about this topic. It's good to see you.
Hi there. Prodigal Educator Forum member reporting for duty.
You're always welcome back home.
Why, thank you. I know that. I honestly deeply know that. So I have something that I various show and tell. So I will have to find out how to send this to Ivea. This is a flyer for a little art exhibit that I picked up because I had the good fortune of getting to go to Venice. And it was utterly amazing. Matite in viaggio means pencils on vacation. And I decided that I think that's what pencil miles translates to in Italian is matite in viaggio.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it was
back on?
what's that? Sure. It's I didn't get to see the whole exhibit, but it was an exhibit about sketching while you travel. But I found the flyers and the pencil miles connection from the title of the exhibit. I wanted to basically say, Ivea, I was thinking about you in Venice. So thank the rest of you for witnessing that. Another thing to share on the topic of, we were talking about abundance and seasons and giving and whatnot. There's a new book from everybody's favorite Robin Wall Kimmerer. So this is the lovely essay that she wrote about the serviceberry that was sort of expanded a bit into now a little book with some illustrations, and it's easy to kind of give somebody. And it's such a lovely piece of writing about the dovetailing of humans and the rest of the natural world. And she's always a wonderful voice for that. And then I wanted to report about some outreach that I did. Now my Bill, I'm sorry, I'm on the Zoom call. So I went to a weird little conference. Advance says hi, Bill. And now you all know that we meow in greeting to each other. So hi. There's a weird little conference that happens once a year in Oakland. The group is called Aspiration Tech. And the conference helps connect up non-profit orgs with technologists. And this is mostly people who are doing sort of movement or roughly left-wing stuff, but with a kind of feminist or intersectional or decolonial kind of slant. And I hadn't known for sure I was going to get to go. Last year, Jack said, "Hey, that sounds like so much fun. I want to go. I promise next year. I promise. You totally get to go next year." I ended up signing up at the very last second and going. And then once I was there, it's an unconference of the style where people offer to do sessions based on kind of the vibe of the group. If there's stuff that it seems like people want that you have to offer, you can lead a session, in which case you're facilitating the session. You aren't so much like, here I came with slides and I'm doing a formal thing, but I'm holding space so that we can talk about a thing. Well, when I mentioned the nature journaling more than once over the first bit of the conference, people were like, "Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Tell me more." So I was handing out nature journaling zines, and then I ended up offering to run a session. And the session was not me taking us through doing nature journaling exercises. It was giving out the zine, explaining a little about our stuff, and brainstorming a little bit about, like, here's a tool I am handing to everybody, and what can we I liked your typo, Jack, actually.
I do too.
Like, what can we do with this tool? We have this lovely little zine. I mean, obviously you all know the little zine, but we have this lovely little zine, and it's translated into 8 languages. And here, here are the links for you to get this in 8 languages. I have been told that that's being shared. So that's super exciting. And a couple of things that came out of it, the practice at this conference is that one person in each group takes notes, and then the notes with no names, but just typing up notes. And so I have access to someone else's notes about the session that I led.
Oh, can we see?
And which I will send to Jack, because you will love them. And one of the things that came up was when I said that compassionate, sustained attention is love, what ended up in the notes was having more ways to love is liberation.
Ooh.
And I wanted to make sure that we heard that. And another thing that came up was that one of the members in our session is a yoga instructor, in addition to being a web technologist. And she talked about how yoga is a thing she thinks of as spiritual technology, because it lets you expand time, that being able to tune into the breath and be so attuned to the present moment lets that present moment get bigger, and that is itself a kind of technology. And in this case, it is a spiritual technology. And she said, and the reason why I'm telling you that is because your nature journaling is spiritual technology.
Oh.
And I went, whoa, I cannot wait to share that with some other people. Tell me more. And she said that it is a tool for going into deep time. And that the way that we are sharing it with people, it is a practice like the way she was talking about yoga, that lets people drill into the present moment and make it richer. And in this group, we talked about how that practice itself is liberatory. And to bring it back to this topic about holidays and celebrations, and in particular gift giving, we were talking about how nature journaling is resistance to all of that. That having a thing where the very practice of it can be as simple as your sketchbook and a pencil or pen is an act of resistance to consumerist, capitalist. You have to buy more things in order to get more joy. And we're saying, actually, no, let's shut out all the things and just pay attention to what is. And that's where the joy is. So that's my outreach report.
Oh, that is brilliant. Hey, Star, could I put you on the spot to respond to what Rosa was just talking about? There's so many themes where she was talking about sort of using this as a mindfulness practice. And I know that this is something that you have done such a deep dive into. Would love to kind of get your reaction to what she was saying. Would that be okay?
Sure. Sure. Oh, it was wonderful, Rosa. And I was thinking as you were talking that was a yoga teacher I'd like to meet. She, I used to teach yoga and meditation. I'm a Kripalu yoga teacher too. So, but so much of yoga, the way we present it in this country, is gymnastics. And to have somebody really understand, and usually it's through the breath, doing the postures, the asanas through the breath in that very deep way that puts you into meditation, basically. And to do that as a sustained practice is so powerful. And I think if I understood correctly, she was saying, or you were making the connection that this is also what happens in our journaling practice, that we can practice in a really a deep way, which is, what I am trying to promote with my own group and in my own work. It's not what everybody's looking for. It's certainly not the path people might start down, but it offers, I think, that really, really critical connection with the natural world that is so often missing, and that allows us, when we really go into it deeply, that allows us to see that we are not separate.
Mm.
And when we lose
Mm.
that sense of separation, then I think we know how to step forward. And I think we don't step forward wisely until we're in that place, really. So, I think it sounds like you had a wonderful experience. And, kudos to any teacher who's trying to get us to that place of deep understanding of non-duality that really lights our light. That's the light in the darkness. Yeah, that's the way forward. If we are able to, and if we're able to do it in a timely way. So yeah, that's my thing.
I
Thank-
felt really
Good.
so proud of the group. People were thanking me for the zine, and I deferred and said I had nothing to do with the making of this beautiful little object, which is it's basically perfect. It is so wonderful. The distillation of skills, the description of what nature journaling is, and then the inside 8 things you can do, and just all of it. I know we're all familiar with it, but like really appreciate it. Like it is a beautiful tool. And it went over so well in a little group that they had no reason to think they were going to wake up that day and hear anything about nature journaling. Right? Like they weren't there for that. Other topics included things like hardening your security posture for possible DDoS attacks for your nonprofit. I mean, like there were people talking about like very techie kind of things.
Yeah.
In the same space, which was one of the beautiful things about the conference. There was another session that somebody else led, but that I attended, that was about joy and pleasure as resistance, and the theme was basically, what are you doing things for? Like, what is the goal of your nonprofit work or your movement work or whatever? It presumably is that we should get to spend more time with our friends and family and experiencing joy and pleasure and appreciating nature, and those are the big picture goals. And if we lose sight of them in the day-to-day of trying to reach them someday, then like it's misguided. That finding ways to access joy and pleasure in an ongoing way, on a daily way, is honestly mandatory. Like it is what supports us as we move forward.
Yeah, I think joy is a choice. It's a choice we make. But I think it can be very difficult. And we're living in a time where for many people, it's very difficult to repeatedly choose to be joyful. But it's an act of courage. It's how we stand up and say things can be different, things can be better. I think we can kind of think of joy as just, good feelings, but I see it as a much stronger thing than that.
Oh, we
and
go
Rosa,
deep.
yes, but
go ahead and then I'll respond.
okay. I just wanted to say to you that, I mean, I love the zine and hand it out at workshops now myself, and it's so beautifully done. But also, if you weren't out there putting it out, if it was just sitting on a desk someplace, it wouldn't be doing the work. So well done. You know,
Thank
that's
you.
that's I think our job now is to get those messages out.
I feel
This-
the way that I've been trying to think about it, and obviously I haven't been talking with this group over this last, like it's only been a month, right? But I've been trying to think about how actions that I take, even little actions, are the thing itself, that it's not like, oh, I'm gonna do some great thing
Mhm.
later, a long time from now, but like what things can I do on an ongoing way where
Mhm.
where that thing itself has already been positive. And the best example of it that I can give is literally like any individual person whose hand I put this into, whose eyes light up when they see it, like is gonna have some experience, right, of
Yeah.
nature that is broader than it would have been if I hadn't.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that it is in those individual moments that it's how we accrue all of it, right? Oh, and I've nearly forgot the best bit. John, Jack, you will love this so much. I knew that I was presenting the material well when people were in the group saying things that come up, like in this group, right? So there were folks in the group who were saying like, oh my God, this could be so powerful for mental health. And I know that I'm one of the people who needs to step up here too, but we a zine where we are making that explicit is going to be amazing. And then as we were kind of winding down, one of the other members of the group said, I just want to, I don't know if this is foolish. It's usually a little stammering, like breaking into the group. And I was like, no, it's fine. What have you got? And she said, it's just, this all reminds me of a poem. And I was like, go, give it to us. What have you got? And she read Praying by Mary Oliver.
Mhm.
It was such a moment. And I was like, if my, from first principles, sharing about nature journaling makes that person say, that reminds me of a Mary Oliver poem, like I felt like I had gotten the material across.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
Oh, that's, yeah, you done right. You done right. And also what this does is this takes this whole conversation back full circle of where we were talking earlier about how there's this sort of emphasis with consumerism.
Mhm.
And what we want to do is look for those sort of non-monetary things, look for the and things that build community. Sharing nature journaling with somebody is so different than getting them a Starbucks gift card. Right? Yeah. Both fold up to about the same size. But we can, without spending money, but by spending time and our attention and energy and love, and through our example, we can spread this tool that is profoundly life-changing and such a different thing than, yeah, just to go back to the Starbucks gift card. It's
So I made sure they knew the zine is free. It is for everybody. It's in all these translations. Those translations are free. Please give it to anybody you think might enjoy it. And we won't know exactly what comes out of that. But I am excited to think that positive things will. And I already have. So
since
so it
you're
was
giving out a bunch of
fun.
these, send me your address and I'll get you sent another package of these to continue being the zine fairy.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sure.
What a rich and wonderful conversation this has been. we're going to be wrapping up in just a moment, so that people can get about lunches or other things through the day. We want to encourage people to think about how you can use this change in seasons and the holidays for yourself personally, for greater reflection with these darker days. How can you reframe that, as Star was describing? How can we bring the gifts of this season into our own practice and share that with our students? The more that we make our journaling relevant to ourselves and relevant to the lives of our students, the more impact it is going to have on us and on them. And perhaps just to end here, is it all right if I share that Mary Oliver poem with folks? Is that all right, Rosa?
Oh, please.
So this is Praying by Mary Oliver. It's a beautiful short poem. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be the weeds in the vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention. Then patch a few words together and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks. And a silence in which another voice may speak.